Hello, welcome to my studio and welcome to another edition of Art Discussion with me, Adelaide Damoah. As you may know, I'm an artist and I really enjoy probing the minds of other artists to find out what makes them tick and how they are able to survive and sometimes thrive in the art world, hence this series, Art Discussion. I like to package all of that information into video format and share it with you in the hope that I'm able to promote the artist while at the same time providing you with some inspiration. So today's interview is rather unique in that I actually interviewed two people at the same time in front of a live audience at the Gallery of African Art in Mayfair, London. The two artists who I interviewed are REWA, who is an emerging and exciting Nigerian-based artist, and the other one is Dagmar Van Weeghel, who is based in the Netherlands. Now, these two artists both have a joint exhibition at the Gallery of African Art, and the title is Her Story, Sisterhood That Transcends. Beautiful title. And it's very befitting to the beautiful work that's on show at this exhibition. So we got into some deep and sometimes funny discussions about their respective journeys in the art world, and both of them have only been practicing for a relatively short space of time. REWA for around a year and Dagmar for around 2 years. I will let them tell their amazing and inspiring stories themselves because they both say their stories far better than I ever could. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. We had lots of fun. Thanks very much for tuning in. Enjoy. Mrs. Cooper said something which is very close to my heart, which is about the lack of representation for female artists. Female artists are extremely underrepresented in the fine art world, just in general across the globe. Just to throw out some statistics just to start the conversation. Right, according to The Guardian, over the past decade, 4% of the National Gallery of Scotland's collection is women, 20% of Whitworth Manchester. Tate Modern's collection is 35% and 33% of women were represented at the Venice Biennale over the last decade, which is really low. But if you want to look at in terms of gallery settings, we're looking at, and these are the big dogs, 83% Lisson Gallery, 71% Houser and Worth, and 59% of Victoria Miro shows were all men. To be here at Mrs. Cooper's gallery, and like she said, she's very passionate about showing women and going out of her way to show women is, that's what we need in the fine art world, because that's the only way that we can have sustainable careers if we're shown in places like this. So thank you, Mrs. Cooper. What I like to do when having these kinds of conversations is, Mrs. Cooper gave a really, really nice introduction to you guys' background, but I just wanted to delve a little bit deeper, and then from there we'll go and start looking, talking about the work that's in this show, the stunning work that's in this show. So starting with you, Miss REWA.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, for me, art, I was born with it, you could say that. My dad is a massive collector, so the likes of Ben Wong and Ella Natsui, he collects, sort of grandmasters. And so growing up, I always saw art on my walls, and I would dabble in it. I'd do a sketch or two here and there, and he would encourage me to explore that further, and I just never did. It was just sort of pencil sketches. And then last year, I was living in South Africa, and I sort of hit a low point in my life. I was in South Africa, I didn't want to be. I needed something to remove myself from that mental rut. And so I went out and I bought myself some watercolor pencils from Typo, and I started creating deities, so Nigerian deities. And the reason I did that was because each deity, so Oshun she's the Orisha, Yoruba Orisha of beauty. Oba is one of fertility and womanhood. I started creating these deities to almost to sort of draw my strength from these women, and I then put them on social media, and people, would look at them and say, "Wow, where could I get this from?" And I was a bit, sort of amazed, like, "Wow, people seem to like what I'm doing." So let me create a body of work, and so I created 14 orishas or deities, depending on which tribe you're looking at. And I was then picked up by a gallery in Lagos, REWA Gallery, and they really wanted to showcase my work. And I created a series then called The Travellers, because I was going back and forth between London, Lagos, and Johannesburg, never longer than a month in each place. And what I wanted to show with those women was how I felt about each different city. And so The Travellers was shown in Lagos at the REWA Gallery, and Mrs. Cooper and Michelle then saw my pieces, and they were interested in me, and I will never forget coming here and meeting both of them, and I was such an emotional wreck. And, it's just, I was so in awe of the two of them, because I'd always followed the Gallery of African Art, and it was one of the places I guess I've always dreamt about having my work shown, and I just never ever fathomed I'd be here. And so when they asked me to come in, it was such an emotional sort of whirlwind, and we had a real great moment. And off the back of that, I created these 10 pieces that you see here today, and I guess we'll talk a bit more about them as we go on. But that's sort of been my art story, and I think now my dad is sort of proud of the work that I'm creating, because before I found my signature style, which I hope that these women are, I hope that people can see them and say that this is a REWA, or you see a woman, you say REWA did this. I think I've finally come to a place where I found a style that works for me, a style I'm comfortable with, and is most reflective of myself, as a person, as a woman. So that's my art journey.
It's quite a story.
Mm-hmm.
And you say you finally come to a place, but you've literally been practicing for like a year. It's like no time at all. It's pretty amazing to have come to this point where you've got this. It's a very, very strong, bold style. So I'd say well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Really beautiful work.
Thank you.
You said something which I thought was interesting, which was you were in a bit of a mental rut.
Yes.
Because you were in a place where you didn't want to be. And would you say that had something to do with a feeling of otherness and not belonging or something like that? What was that?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And so some of my friends who are in the audience, they kind of know, they knew me at that time in South Africa where I just, sort of wasn't myself. And I think it was just feelings of powerlessness. It was feelings of, just not sort of belonging, not being home, which I consider to be Lagos, under no circumstances would I ever be anywhere else. But that's where I wanted to be, that's where my partner was. And I felt, just completely powerless in that situation. And I just needed a form of catharsis, and that's when I started creating my work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were there for work?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dagmar,
yes.
What's your art story? I saw some pretty impressive things about you being in Vogue Italia and all sorts.
Right.
So where did you start? I know you went to film school.
Yes, I did, and I graduated in 1998.
Okay.
After which I immediately went 1 year to Zimbabwe as a wildlife camera woman with a painted hunting dog project, something completely different. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Then I came back and I worked as a film and advertisement producer, and later as a director as well. But I was always craving to go back to the African continent, just not really like a wildlife filmmaker. That's what I had decided. So in 2002 I left again for sabbatical, and I went to Botswana with a camera again. And while there I had developed a format to make fiction films with local communities, so all non-actors, but they would be a part of the film projects, and I initiated an organization called Nature for Kids, Environmental Education with local children. And that actually became a very successful model. I did that for many years, approximately 14 years. And while I was there, I met my husband. He's from Zimbabwe, and we ended up living in Johannesburg as well, where we had our first born. And then we moved back to the Netherlands. And when we moved back, which is now 9 years ago, I experienced very close hand how difficult it was for him to make the transition to the Netherlands, even though he had been very, very many times. It wasn't easy to settle and to feel full. And he was actually depressed for quite a couple of years, trying to settle down. And that was hard, but also I got interested because of this, of how people who move from one place to the other, how they experience that now, but also in history, especially people coming from the African continent. So I think that's what set up this part of me, but I was still working as a filmmaker. And then my second child was born, and I was still traveling a lot to different African countries to film. That became more difficult, and I was trying to look for ways of still telling my stories, but a bit closer to home, and that's why I picked up the photo camera about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and yeah, I haven't looked back actually. It worked out well, yeah. So immediately I focused on the story of a historic figure I had heard and learned about, Sarah Forbes Bonetta, the African princess from Nigeria. And that was the first project, and I think it came at a time where a lot of people hadn't heard about her. It was interesting that I had come out with the story, which also caused for discussion at that time. So I immediately had quite a bit of exposure. And funny enough, also in the fashion world, because I was showing black models in a very regal way, and very much to the forefront. So that caught the attention of people like Vogue Italia. And since then, I've just wanted to tell stories that were really close to my heart, and that's how it has developed to sitting here now, which is amazing. Yes,
amazing. And I'm really interested in the fact that for a lot of people who won't know your story, they'll be very interested in the fact that you're specifically, and it seems only, really working with black models. And that is, it's interesting when it's a white lady who's doing that. And so people will be thinking, is there a specific reason for that? So
yes, I've received that question right from the start, and valid question. And at the beginning I would say yes, but I've worked and lived on the continent for many years, and my husband is African and my children are. But then I'm now at the stage where I'm thinking, I don't work with models. These are all real people, so I don't seek out faces because I think from an aesthetic point of view they are pretty. I meet people, or people contact me because they know what stories I'm telling, and I'm really still a storyteller. Like in my film past, I used to tell stories, and I've just translated that now to a photo medium, and what I'm doing is really telling the people's stories, so I'm not subjugating, or I'm not talking about them, but they're really my co-authors.
Yes.
And it's something that's really close to me, and my children also have questions about identity, so all these identity related issues are very close. I've lived a long time on the continent as well. So it's just something that completely occupies me now in my photography. So it's not from an aesthetic point of view about the color, it's just about giving people another perspective and trying to tie these two worlds a bit together, or bridge them, how you want to say, and offer people another narrative of the people who are on the move or are displaced, or just to make it a bit more beautiful and softer rather than stereotype.
Yeah, but just on that point that you mentioned about otherness, and we mentioned that just before as well. Do you feel like you're able to connect with the viewer and bring them back to that understanding of that sense of otherness and being, especially, well, for both of you, for you it's the opposite way for someone like me who's living in the UK as someone who was born and raised here but is black, in a majority white country. For you, you spent 14 years living in Africa. And so do you think that telling the stories of these women and perhaps showing them in a Western context is your way of communicating that sense of otherness.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. And I think because I do it very from an aesthetic point of view, people are not, it's not in their face for the viewer, so it's very easy to connect to. But there's this second layer that I hope that they would start to investigate, what is the work about. It's really their stories, and it's stories that many people share, and especially a lot of women in the diaspora share. But I think it's just not really given a voice because it's a space that's very untangible, and it's difficult to discuss depression and feelings of otherness, and I'm just trying to break that a little bit open. So some people make the connection to the deeper layer, and other people just see an aesthetic. So that's all right.
Yeah.
I just hope that the people who connect to it on a deeper level, that it has a bit of a healing effect to it, or epiphany, like, oh wait, there's more than meets the eye.
Yes, yeah. And what about you, Rhea? Or would you say that was more relevant to your Traveller series?
Definitely more relevant to my Traveller series. Although funny enough, now I'm doing a lot more traveling now than I was then. With this series, I'm trying to educate people on where I'm from and my culture. So I'm Igbo, from one of the 3 major tribes of Nigeria. So this collection is celebrating our naming rights and traditions. It's a huge thing. It's called, Igwafa, and it occurs on the 8th day after a child is born. The grandparents then go through the whole rites and divinations to our ancestors, and they give the child a name. And my name is not Nigerian, but my second name is. But what I was trying to show is how loaded our names are and how they sort of define who we are as a person. So, immediately to my left, we have Oluchi, who's my best friend. She's in the audience, and her name means God's handwork. And she sees the beauty in the world around her, and that's who Oluchi is. And when I think of my friend, I feel like her name has completely and utterly personified who she is as a person, who she is to me. So that's what I try to show with my collections.
That's beautiful. Okay, so on to the title of this show, Her Story, Sisterhood That Transcends, which I think is an amazing title. Who's responsible for the title? Michelle? Mrs. Cooper? Michelle? It's a beautiful title. So just in terms of that title, could you both talk about your work in the context of the title and what that means to you and how your work sort of illustrates the title?
It's definitely a sisterhood. I'm a sisterhood with Dagmar now. But
Without me,
jokes aside, in terms of transcendence of work, I hope that not just because my women are Igbo women, I hope that a Danish lady or a Ghanaian lady could look at them and see beyond her name and say, those characteristics also apply to me, and therefore I connect with this woman. So I feel like in that sense, they do transcend. It's not limited to, an Igbo viewer just seeing it and being able to connect. I would hope that when people read the meanings behind the names, they see a lot more to the woman, and they make that connection in that way.
That's lovely, and it's all the more pertinent that I think titles for work is so important. Like you were saying, with naming a person. So the way you've got the title in terms of the woman's name, and then the meaning, and then some more explanation underneath that.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay, and you, Dagmar?
It's what my work is about completely. So I have made photos or portraits of males as well, including my own husband, for a series that's called Diaspora. But I tend to really lean towards the story of the women I meet. Because of that sense of sisterhood, I think all women should support each other, and I think I'm doing that with the ones that I portray, and they are doing that also towards me. I think we are seeking something in each other which consoles, and where you find that space where there's just understanding, because we're female, but also sometimes because you're in the same situation. So it's really, really all what my work is about, and I'm really friends with some of the girls I work with. Ongoing, the story with Lish, I've been working with her now for 2 years, and we're really close, and we make different bodies of work depending on how she feels, and she also has written a book about her past and her present life in Europe. So it's really a marriage or a bond that we share, and I hope that people make that connection, and where it transcends, of course, is that it just goes beyond race, background, cultural things.
Like I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of the statistics with representation of women in the art world, how do you feel? Do you feel that any of that has affected you or held you back, or is it something that you haven't really noticed?
I've even noticed it in the film business.
Okay.
So that's also very much a male-driven business. I remember when I was living in Johannesburg or Cape Town the last time, I came up with the idea to start a production company only with women, just to support women and just opportunities. You know, it's all about opportunities. That's why this is so great, this exhibition, because we are giving a platform from Mrs. Cooper and Michelle in the gallery. I think women's language in the arts is actually profoundly different than a male's voice. I think our work is much more refined, softer often, without stereotyping. But I think we really bring something else to the table, and it should just all be about equal opportunities.
You know, this world is still quite quite new to me. But when I think of collectors, all the collectors that I know are male. The grandmasters of Nigerian art, again, are male. There are a lot of upcoming female artists as well, whom I really respect and admire. I love their work, and I think some have been showcased here as well at GAFRA. But to say, do I think I've sort of experienced any sort of setbacks as a result of my gender in the art space? I think it's probably still a bit too early for me to tell. But certainly in my corporate life, yeah, definitely, I face that, all the time. So I've since moved from insurance. I'm now in private equity, and I head up investor relations for a private equity company. And we've sort of been on roadshows because we're about to list on an international stock exchange. And when I sit in front of investors, the men, they don't pay attention. When I then follow up with an email, they'll say, "Okay, yeah, sure, I'll listen to your brief and go out with me for drinks." And
Wow.
it's like things like, "But no, I'm here to speak with you about sort of my company." And then one made a comment as to, "I can see why you head up investor relations, because you're a glorified beauty pageant," which it's
wow.
You come across all sorts of nonsense.
Okay, so in terms of, and again, I'm going to say this again, you both have not been practicing for a long period of time at all, but from what I've read about both of you, you've both achieved some significant milestones in your careers in a very short space of time. So what would you say was the thing that you were the most proud of, and how did you achieve it? Let's start with you.
With me? Yes, I think the point when a first gallery approached me, that was quite interesting, because I had just made one series. It's like meeting the people at the right time with the right work. That was an important moment. And then of course the second gallery, and this one, for me, is a major achievement, because as I said before, it was quite challenging to move around in this world with my stories. I didn't choose a very easy subject with my background, and so to be exhibited at the Gallery of African Art is for me a big thing. And I had the same feeling on Instagram, social media. There are a lot of platforms where people share your work, and I profoundly remember when somebody who's a well-known curator on social media, he shared my work for the first time. I mean, that was just a game changer. I remember I sat in the car, I was like, I will be more accepted, people will read more what I do. I think that was a profound moment, and being exhibited here was really, really a game changer. Yeah.
And you, Lima, same question.
Oh, so I mean, of course, the standout achievement is being here. And again, they know what I was like when I came in here to see them for the first time. I was just floored by the whole experience, and it speaks volumes for a gallery of this caliber to feature you. It's something I just never thought would happen for me. And they're always, I think, every day I experience some sort of achievement. So. My friends know how crazy I got when CNN Africa posted up my paintings on their page. I was at the airport screaming like a crazy person. And again, being selected as the Relay Gallery made us one of the young contemporaries for 2017. Every day is an accomplishment when people approach me to buy my works, and they really connect with it. So every single day I have a little thing that just makes me so proud of myself and very happy. But again, like a gallery like this is definitely like one of the pinnacles. It's even small things, like I had companies asking me to put my works on a T-shirt and sell a collection of goddesses or evil women, and I wouldn't go down that route. It's just not what I'm trying to achieve as an artist, but. What I'm trying to say is it's that recognition of, what you're putting out there and, what people see in you. So every day for me, I experience a little bit of achievement,
Yeah. If you could get in a time machine right now and go back to where you first started in your career as an artist, as in what you're doing right now with this show, what advice would you give to yourself, Dagmar?
Well, funny enough, I also do not disconnect my filming past and my photography. I think my images are still very dynamic and storytelling, so I still think I'm the same person, and the growth I've made in filmmaking is what you can also feel in my still photography. Yeah, I think which is very feminine trait is that you want everybody to like you. And sometimes that requires that you go beyond yourself, or you push yourself. I think the advice would be that that's not really important, that's not what it's about. I think I got a lot of gray hairs trying to please people while I was feeling the opposite. So that was both in filmmaking and photography. Yeah.
And what advice would you give to complete strangers? Just say somebody sitting here who wants to do what you're doing.
Right.
What would you say?
I'd say just make the work that you want to make, and don't have the goal gallery exhibition in mind or fashion photography. Don't try to put yourself in a box, and just see it as a journey and make your stories that makes you happy and that you want to maybe see on the wall. Share it with others. I mean, social media is amazing. It has achieved for me so much. I think that's a great tool of getting your work to be seen by others. So I think that would be my advice. Just make what you love, what comes out of the heart, what you'd like to hang up, and don't think about, is this going to sell in a gallery or going to be in a museum.
That's great advice. Your turn.
My turn.
Time machine.
Yes, time machine. What would I go back and do differently? Absolutely not. Actually, that's a lie. What I would not do is give away my paintings for free, which is what I use. So I would make these things. This is fairly early on. My friends would just come and take them, and I would allow them because I never saw myself as I never really kind of took myself too seriously then. But I wouldn't do that anymore. And I think the most important thing is to just start. Just start. Today, just go home and start. Tomorrow, just start. Just do it.
And is that the same thing you would say to somebody here who wants to follow in your footsteps?
My footsteps. I have side feet. My footsteps are very No, but yeah, it's the same thing. It applies cross industry, cross plant. Just start. Yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice. So now we'd like to open up the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions for these ladies?
You spoke about othering and your husband in coming to the Netherlands. Was your experience living and working in Africa in terms of being very different to the people that were there? Were there parallels between your husband's experience, or was your other experience different from his other experience?
I think what the difference was is that I expected me to be othered while I was working in the communities over there, because I'm in Zungu, and so that's something that you then expect because you've also heard it, and I have witnessed it a lot. But we didn't expect it because we had visited Holland many times. It was just different when you settle in a community, and which is not a big city, and you start becoming part of the daily life. So I think it was more unexpected than the other way around.
I have a quick question. If you had to tell us 3 women that have really affected you and inspired you throughout your life, given some Hindi literature, whatever, art, whatever,
Yes.
who would they be and why, and how did that affect you, and how has it helped you as a person, as an individual?
Yes, I would start saying my mother. She raised me and my sister alone. They got divorced when they were quite young. And she was a working mother, so I have a lot of respect for that. So she taught me most things. I think because my background is also conservation, Jane Goodall it was a big source of inspiration when I was young, and I always wanted to work with animals. And the third person who's inspired me. No, I have to think about that a little bit longer. Maybe if you start with your 1 and 2.
For me, of course, it's my mother. She's the strongest woman I know, and I think she broke a lot of personal boundaries in society that advises women to stick with status quo when it's not necessarily a healthy thing to do or the right thing to do for them. And she broke out of those molds and built a life for herself and for her children. So it's, without a shadow of a doubt, it's my mother. The second one would be my grandmother. So she's English, and she married an African man in a time where racism was rampant and ripe. It still is to an extent now, well, it still is now, but I mean, those times it was a lot more. It was a lot more taboo, and so the family, cut her off as a result of that marriage, and she moved back to Nigeria, and she lived through the Civil War with her grandfather, and she's probably the most Nigerian person I know. So it's just that strength and adaptability of her. She's incredibly strong. And then the third woman, it's a combination. It's my best friend who's in the crowd here today. It's my sisters. It's my friends, all of whom are on the wall. So every woman that you see in these paintings, she means something to me. And so the third would be a pool of women beyond sisters. Sisters.
Yeah, I'd like to go with that one.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. That's a good one.
How would you define strength in terms of, so both of you are strong women, and I'm quite fascinated with the idea of strength seems to be quite a masculine, heavy type of, I do think it's a different strength when it comes to women's strength or man's strength, if you could quantify that.
What's the difference? Or
Or do you think there is a difference, or is it a different type of strength?
Yes. I think that the women's strength has more to do, in my eyes, at the space where I am now, with perseverance, resilience, going through, a hurricane of issues and having the perseverance to come out of there. I'm really inspired by that, and I think that's something that you also see in my work, that I really pay tribute to that part of women, and that just goes with the respect I have for that. Something I also seek to always just be strong, minded, not in muscle, but to pursue what I need and want in life. So, and I think a male would maybe measure strength more in terms of how heavy of the weights he could lift or push a trolley or something. Well, we can also do that. I want to say that. So I think there's a difference in how both parties measure strength. And we seem to seek it in the emotional state rather than the physical state, I think.
Hello, welcome back. Thanks very much for joining me for that edition of Art Discussion with REWA and Dagmar Van Weeghel. If you're around in town until that date, please do go and check out the exhibition. It is one not to be missed. You won't regret it. For now, please do subscribe to my channel because by subscribing you get to keep up to date with the latest exhibitions and interviews like this one, and you never know where I'm going to end up. Until next time, take care. Bye.